I stand before you not as someone who has it all figured out, not as someone untouched by pain, but as someone who learned to breathe again after life tried to silence her. I am not here to tell you that life is easy or that dreams come true without scars. I am here to tell you that broken does not mean finished and imperfect does not mean unworthy. We live in a world that celebrates perfection. Perfect bodies, perfect lives, perfect stories edited for screens and applause. And in that race for perfection, we quietly start hating the parts of ourselves that don't fit the frame. We hide our fears. We apologize for our flaws. We try to erase the chapters of our life that hurt the most. But what if those very cracks are the places where strength is born? What if the things you are most ashamed of are the reasons you are still standing today? There was a time when I believed my worth was tied to what I could do, how fast I could move, how much I could give without asking for help. And then life happened. Not gently, not politely. It arrived like a storm and left everything shattered. In that silence, when the noise of the world faded, I was forced to face a terrifying question. If everything I relied on is gone, who am I now? That question is one many of you are afraid to ask, because the answer requires honesty. It requires stripping away titles, expectations, and the version of yourself created to please others. When you stand there with nothing but your raw truth, it hurts. It feels lonely. But it is also the most powerful place you will ever stand, because from there you can rebuild, not who the world wants you to be, but who you truly are. Pain has a strange language. It teaches without asking permission. It humbles without mercy. But it also reveals. It reveals your courage when you think you have none. It reveals your faith when hope feels impossible. And most importantly, it reveals that you are far stronger than the voice in your head that keeps telling you to give up. We often say, I will be happy when I succeed, when I heal, when I am perfect. But happiness is not a destination waiting at the end of a flawless journey. Happiness is choosing to live fully, even when you are hurting. It is choosing gratitude when bitterness feels easier. It is choosing yourself when the world has already decided your limitations. Being perfectly imperfect means accepting that you will fall and choosing to rise anyway. It means understanding that your story does not lose its value because it includes pain. In fact, it gains depth. A story without struggle is easy to forget. A story that survives darkness becomes a light for others. There were days when getting out of bed felt like a victory. Days when smiling took more courage than people will ever know. And I learned something important. Strength is not loud. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes strength is quiet. It is simply showing up when your heart feels heavy. It is choosing life again and again, even when life has not been kind to you. Do not underestimate the power of your survival. The fact that you are here, listening, breathing, trying, that alone is proof that you have not been defeated. You may feel delayed, damaged, or different, but none of those words define your worth. The world does not need another perfect person. It needs honest ones. It needs people who have walked through fire and still choose compassion. Stop waiting for permission to love yourself. Stop comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. Your journey is yours. Your pace is yours. Your healing is yours. And no one has the right to tell you that you are too slow, too weak, or too broken to matter. When you accept your imperfections, something beautiful happens. You stop fighting yourself. You stop wasting energy on pretending. And that energy turns into purpose to inspire, to serve, to create, to live with intention. Your flaws no longer feel like enemies. They become reminders of how far you have come. I have learned that scars are not signs of failure. They are signatures of survival. They tell the world that you were hurt, but you were not destroyed. And when someone else sees your scars and feels less alone, That is when pain transforms into meaning. So, if today you are struggling, if today you feel invisible, if today you are questioning your value, let me remind you of this. You are not here by accident. Your breath has purpose. Your voice has power. Your existence matters even on the days you don't feel strong. Choose to live as you are, not as you are expected to be. Choose courage over comfort. Choose growth over perfection. And remember, you were never meant to be flawless. You were meant to be real, resilient, and alive. Imperfection is often treated like a flaw that must be hidden, corrected, or apologized for. From a very young age, we are taught to measure ourselves against impossible standards, to edit our personalities, our bodies, our emotions, until we fit neatly into what the world calls acceptable. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin to believe that something is wrong with us simply because we are different, wounded, slower, louder, quieter, or more sensitive than others. This belief settles deep inside us and starts shaping how we see our value, making us think that unless we are flawless, we are not enough. But imperfection is not a weakness. It is evidence of life lived honestly. Every crack, every scar, every limitation carries a story of survival. Perfection has never endured pain, never faced loss, never learned how to stand again after being shattered. Only imperfection does that. Only the broken know what it means to rebuild. Only the table. When you share your struggles, you give others permission to stop hiding theirs. Your vulnerability becomes a bridge. It tells someone else that they are not alone in their pain, that their brokenness does not disqualify them from love, dignity, or purpose. In a world where everyone is trying to look invincible, choosing authenticity becomes a radical act. Many people spend their lives fighting their imperfections, exhausting themselves by trying to erase what makes them human. They believe that once they fix everything that feels wrong, they will finally deserve happiness. But happiness does not wait on perfection. Peace arrives when resistance ends, when you stop being at war with yourself. Accepting imperfection does not mean giving up on growth. It means growing without self-hatred. Every scar carries memory. Some remind you of moments you wish never happened, moments that still ache when remembered, but those same scars also remind you that you survived. They are proof that pain did not have the final word. They show that even when you were at your weakest, something within you chose to endure. That choice, repeated again and again, is strength. Imperfection teaches empathy. When you know what it feels like to fall, you stop judging those who stumble. When you have tasted failure, you stop mocking those who struggle. Your heart becomes gentler, more patient, more open. This softness is not fragility. It is wisdom earned through hardship. The strongest hearts are not the hardest ones, but the ones that can feel deeply without breaking. We often underestimate the damage caused by constantly telling ourselves that we are not enough. Those words become beliefs, and beliefs become barriers. But when you begin to see your imperfections as part of your design rather than defects, your inner dialogue changes. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift alone can change the direction of a life. Imperfection allows growth because it leaves room for learning. Perfection is static, it has nowhere to go. Imperfection is dynamic, it evolves, it adapts, it improves not out of fear, but out of self-respect. When you accept that you are a work in progress, you free yourself from the pressure of having to arrive. You allow yourself to move forward without the burden of unrealistic expectations. There is also dignity in imperfection. It reminds us that we do not have to earn our right to exist. We do not have to prove our value by being exceptional every day. Simply being present, being sincere, being human is enough. The need to constantly perform disappears when you realize that you are worthy even in stillness, even in struggle. Imperfection does not diminish your light. It gives it texture. Light passing through cracks becomes visible. It becomes meaningful. Without darkness, light has no definition. Without flaws, beauty feels empty. What touches people is not polished perfection, but raw truth. It is the honesty in admitting fear, the courage in continuing anyway, the grace in accepting yourself while you grow. When you stop seeing imperfection as a weakness, you stop shrinking. You take up space as you are. You speak without apologizing for your voice. You dream without waiting to be flawless. You live without constantly measuring yourself against someone else's standards. And in that freedom, strength unfolds naturally, quietly, steadily, through the simple act of being real. Pain enters our lives without invitation, and often without explanation. It does not ask whether we are ready, strong, or prepared. It simply arrives and rearranges everything we thought we knew about ourselves. In the beginning, pain feels like an enemy, something to escape, deny, or bury deep inside. We learn to smile through it, to pretend we are fine, to move on as if nothing has changed. But unprocessed pain does not disappear. It settles quietly within us, shaping our fears, our reactions, and our sense of worth. There are moments when pain strips life down to its bare essentials. Dreams feel distant. Confidence feels fragile. Even simple tasks feel heavy. In those moments, it is easy to believe that suffering has no meaning, that it exists only to break us. But pain, as cruel as it feels, carries lessons no comfort ever could. It forces us to confront truths we avoided when life was easy. It exposes what matters and what never did. It teaches us the cost of resilience. Pain reveals strength that comfort keeps hidden. When everything is going well, we rely on routine and familiarity. When things fall apart, we are forced to rely on ourselves in ways we never imagined. We discover endurance we did not know we possessed. We learn that even when the heart feels shattered, it can still beat with purpose. Survival becomes an act of courage, and each day lived becomes a quiet victory. Many people believe that purpose is found in success, recognition, or achievement. But purpose is often born in struggle. It grows in the space where pain meets persistence. When you have suffered, you begin to see life differently. You stop chasing what looks impressive and start valuing what feels meaningful. You become aware of the silent battles others are fighting, and that awareness changes how you move through the world. Pain also sharpens empathy. It opens the heart in ways happiness alone never could. When you have known loss, you recognize it in others without a word being spoken. When you have felt despair, you become gentler with those who are drowning in it. Your pain becomes a language through which you understand the world more deeply. This understanding is not weakness. It is a powerful form of connection. There is a moment in every painful journey when a choice appears, though it may not look like one. You can allow pain to harden you, to turn you bitter, closed, and angry at life, or you can allow it to soften you, to make you more aware, more compassionate, more alive. Neither path is easy, but one leads to isolation, and the other leads to meaning. Pain, when acknowledged, begins to transform. It stops being a weight you drag behind you and starts becoming a source of wisdom you carry with you. The wounds remain, but they no longer control your direction. Instead, they guide you toward purpose. They remind you of where you have been and why you now choose differently. Many people hide their pain because they believe it makes them look weak. They fear being judged, pitied, or misunderstood, but hiding pain often deepens it. Expression is not a sign of fragility. It is a step toward healing. When pain is given a voice, it loses some of its power to dominate. When it is shared, it becomes lighter. There is something transformative about realizing that your pain can serve someone else, that the tears you cried in isolation can one day comfort another human being, that the darkness you survive can become a light for someone still lost in it. In that realization, suffering begins to make sense, not because it was good, but because it was not wasted. Purpose does not erase pain, it gives it direction. It allows you to move forward without denying the past. It turns wounds into wisdom and survival into service. You begin to understand that your experiences, no matter how painful, have equipped you with insight that cannot be learned from books or success alone. Pain also teaches patience. Healing does not follow a timeline, and growth does not happen overnight. Purpose unfolds slowly, often invisibly. There are days when you feel strong and days when old wounds ache again. This does not mean you are failing, it means you are human. Pain does not move in a straight line, and neither does healing. Through pain, priorities shift. You stop wasting energy on what drains you. You stop tolerating what harms you. You learn to protect your peace, not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. Pain teaches boundaries, and boundaries create space for purpose to grow. The journey from pain to purpose is not about becoming unbreakable. It is about becoming honest. Honest about what hurt you. Honest about what changed you. Honest about what you now stand for. This honesty gives life depth and direction. It aligns you with a purpose that feels authentic rather than imposed. When pain is met with awareness, it transforms identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and begin to see yourself as a survivor with a story. That story carries influence. It carries truth. It carries the power to shift perspectives, including your own. Purpose born from pain is often quiet. It does not always announce itself with applause or recognition. Sometimes it lives in the way you listen more deeply, love more carefully, and choose kindness even when you know how cruel life can be. This purpose may not look impressive to the world, but it changes lives in ways that matter. Pain may have shaped you, but it does not own you. It may have changed your path, but it did not end your journey. When you allow pain to teach instead of destroy, it becomes a guide rather than a prison. And in that transformation, you find not just meaning, but a reason to continue forward with courage, awareness, and quiet strength. For a long time, many of us live as strangers to ourselves. We learn early how to adjust, how to blend in, how to become what is expected rather than who we truly are. Approval becomes a habit, and comparison becomes a daily ritual. Slowly, without noticing, we begin to abandon parts of ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant to define our worth. In that process, we confuse acceptance with validation and silence our inner voice to avoid discomfort. True power does not arrive when the world applauds us. It arrives when we stop needing that applause to feel whole. Self-acceptance is not about believing you are perfect. It is about understanding that you are enough even while you are growing. It is the moment you decide to stand by yourself instead of standing against yourself. This decision changes everything, because the relationship you have with yourself shapes every other relationship in your life. Many people think self-acceptance is passive, that it means settling or giving up on improvement. In reality, it is one of the most courageous and active choices a person can make. It requires honesty, and honesty is uncomfortable. It requires facing fears, insecurities, and wounds without turning away. It requires acknowledging your limits without allowing them to define your potential. Comparison is one of the greatest obstacles to self-acceptance. It convinces you that your timeline is wrong, your progress is insufficient, and your journey is somehow less valuable than someone else's. But comparison ignores context. It ignores the battles you fought in silence, the losses you carried quiet, the strength it took just to keep going. When you measure yourself against someone else's life, you overlook the depth of your own resilience. Self-acceptance begins when you stop negotiating your worth. When you no longer say, "I will love myself when I achieve this," or "I will respect myself when I become that." Worth is not a reward for success. It is the foundation that makes success meaningful. When you accept yourself as you are, you stop chasing validation and start building alignment between your values and your actions. There is a difference between listening to feedback and living for approval. Feedback can help you grow. Approval controls you. When your sense of self depends on how others perceive you, you become fragmented. You perform instead of live. Self-acceptance reunites you with yourself. It allows you to be consistent, grounded, and whole, even when opinions change. Many people fear self-acceptance because they believe it will make them complacent. But the opposite is true. When you are not busy fighting yourself, you have more energy to evolve. Growth driven by self-respect is sustainable. Growth driven by self-loathing is exhausting. Acceptance creates a stable ground from which real change can occur. Self-acceptance also teaches responsibility. It does not deny mistakes or weaknesses. It acknowledges them without shame and addresses them without cruelty. When you accept yourself, you take ownership of your actions instead of hiding behind excuse, or guilt. This ownership is empowering because it gives you control over your choices rather than your past. The world often rewards conformity, but self-acceptance invites authenticity. Authenticity does not guarantee approval, but it guarantees integrity. When you live in alignment with who you truly are, your decisions become clearer. You stop saying yes out of fear and no out of guilt. You begin to honor your needs, your boundaries, and your values without apology. Self-acceptance is deeply connected to emotional freedom. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, emotions lose their power to overwhelm you. You learn that feelings are temporary messengers, not permanent identities. This understanding allows you to experience life fully without being controlled by it. There is a quiet confidence that comes with self-acceptance. It does not need to announce itself. It does not depend on external recognition. It shows up in how you walk through uncertainty, how you respond to criticism, and how you treat yourself on difficult days. This confidence is resilient because it is rooted internally. When you accept yourself, relationships change. You stop seeking completion from others and start offering presence instead. You choose connection over dependency. You attract people who respect your boundaries rather than those who benefit from your self-doubt. Self-acceptance creates healthier dynamics because it is based on mutual respect rather than emotional neediness. Self-acceptance also allows you to forgive yourself. Many people carry guilt long after lessons have been learned. They punish themselves for past decisions, forgetting that growth often requires mistakes. Acceptance acknowledges that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Forgiveness releases energy trapped in regret and redirects it toward growth. There will be days when self-acceptance feels difficult. Old insecurities resurface. External criticism triggers internal doubt. These moments do not erase progress, they reveal areas still healing. Self-acceptance is not a destination you arrive at once, it is a practice you return to daily. Choosing self-acceptance in a world obsessed with perfection is an act of quiet rebellion. It is a refusal to measure your value by unrealistic standards. It is a commitment to live honestly rather than impressively. This choice may not always feel comfortable, but it creates a life that feels true. When you accept yourself, you stop shrinking to fit into expectations that were never designed for you. You take up space with intention. You speak with clarity. You move with purpose. Not because you are fearless, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. Self-acceptance does not remove challenges, but it changes how you face them. Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence of inadequacy, you see them as opportunities for growth. This shift transforms struggle into learning and setbacks into redirection. In accepting yourself, you reclaim your power. Not power over others, but power over your own choices, reactions, and direction. This power is steady, grounded, and sustainable. It does not depend on circumstances, applause, or approval. It lives quietly within you, shaping a life built on truth rather than fear. Survival is often misunderstood because it does not always look heroic. It does not always come with applause, recognition, or dramatic moments of victory. More often, survival is quiet. It is invisible. It is the simple act of continuing when giving up would feel easier. It is waking up on days when the weight of life feels heavier than your strength, and still choosing to face the day. This choice, repeated again and again, is a form of strength that deserves recognition. Many people believe strength means never breaking, never falling, never needing help. But true strength is revealed in moments of vulnerability. It shows itself when you allow yourself to feel pain instead of denying it, when you admit you are tired instead of pretending to be fine, when you ask for support instead of isolating yourself. Survival is not about being unshakable. It is about being willing to adapt when life shakes you. There are seasons when survival becomes the only goal. Dreams pause. Ambitions quiet down. The future feels distant. In these moments, society often pressures people to move faster, to stay positive, to be strong in ways that ignore reality. But survival does not need motivatio, end speeches, or forced optimism. It needs permission to slow down, permission to rest, permission to heal at your own pace. Every person who has survived something carries a strength that cannot be measured. It is not visible in achievements or status, but it is present in character. It shows in resilience, in patience, in the depth of understanding they bring into conversations. Survivors see the world differently because they have seen how fragile it can be. This awareness shapes how they love, how they forgive, and how they endure. Survival teaches humility. It reminds you that control is limited and certainty is fragile. Plans can change. Life can shift in a moment. This realization can be frightening, but it can also be grounding. When you understand how temporary things are, you begin to value presence over perfection and meaning over appearances. There is a deep courage in staying present when leaving feels tempting, staying hopeful when hope feels fragile, staying kind when pain could justify bitterness. These choices may go unnoticed by others, but they shape the core of who you become. Survival is not passive. It is an active decision to keep engaging with life despite uncertainty. Many survivors struggle with guilt. They wonder why they made it through when others did not. They question whether they deserve peace or happiness after pain. But survival is not a debt to be repaid. It is a responsibility to live. Living fully becomes an act of hope, not just for yourself, but for the journey you endured. Survival also redefines success. Success stops being about accumulation and starts being about sustainability. It becomes about creating a life that you can live in, not one that looks impressive from the outside. It becomes about protecting your mental and emotional health, about choosing environments that support your well-being rather than drain it. The strength found in survival is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It exists in consistency, in showing up for yourself when no one is watching, in choosing healthier patterns even when old habits feel familiar, in setting boundaries that protect your energy and dignity. These are not dramatic acts, but they are transformative ones. Survival often brings moments of doubt about identity, direction, and future. When life interrupts your plans, you may feel disconnected from who you once were. But survival is also a process of rediscovery. You learn who you are when everything familiar is stripped away. You discover values that remain when circumstances change. Through survival, resilience is built not in grand gestures, but in small decisions. Drinking water when you forget to care for yourself. Resting when guilt tells you to keep pushing. reaching out when isolation feels safer. These small acts accumulate into strength over time. Survival also creates space for gratitude, not in a forced way, but in a grounded one. You begin to appreciate simple things, moments of calm, genuine connection, quiet mornings, shared laughter. These moments become meaningful because survival taught you how easily they can be lost. There is wisdom in surviving that cannot be taught. It teaches you to recognize what truly matters. It teaches you to let go of what no longer serves you. It teaches you that progress is not always forward motion. Sometimes it is standing still without giving up. Many people underestimate themselves because they compare their survival to others' achievements. They see success in milestones and overlook the courage it took just to stay alive. But survival is not lesser than achievement. It is the foundation that makes achievement possible. Without survival, nothing else follows. The strength of survival also lies in its honesty. It does not pretend everything is fine. It acknowledges pain without allowing it to define the future. It allows both grief and growth to coexist. This balance is where true resilience lives. Survival is a continuous process. There is no final moment when you can say it is complete. It evolves as life changes. Each new challenge requires a renewed commitment to keep going. This does not mean you are weak, it means you are alive. In recognizing survival as strength, you begin to respect your own journey. You stop minimizing what you have been through. You stop dismissing your endurance as ordinary. You realize that continuing, even quietly, is an extraordinary act of courage. Survival does not make you invincible. It makes you aware. Aware of your limits and your capabilities. Aware of your need for rest and your capacity to rise again. This awareness becomes a guide helping you move forward with intention rather than pressure. When you honor survival, you honor life itself. Not as a perfect experience, but as a real one. You learn to carry strength gently, without hardness. You learn that endurance does not require suffering in silence. It allows space for healing, growth, and presence, even in the midst of uncertainty. In the end, this journey is not about becoming flawless or proving your strength to the world. It is about recognizing the courage it took to survive, the wisdom born from pain, and the power that comes from accepting yourself as you are. Every scar carries a lesson. Every setback carries growth. And every moment you chose to continue carries meaning. Your imperfections are not obstacles to your purpose. They are the very paths that led you to it. When you stop fighting who you are and start honoring who you have become, life begins to feel lighter, more honest, and more alive. You are not broken beyond repair, not delayed beyond hope, and not invisible beyond worth. You are perfectly imperfect, and that is your greatest strength.